Aliens laughed at the human who bought a corroded safe, but inside was the key to a galactic treasury. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The market on Nexus Station bustled with activity as merchants from across the galaxy hawked their wares. Among the crowds of diverse alien species, a solitary human stood out like a sore thumb. Tyler Grant shuffled through the crowded alien marketplace, his worn maintenance uniform marking him as just another human worker on Nexus Station, the massive trading hub at the edge of Sector 7. The artificial gravity felt slightly heavier today, or perhaps it was just the weight of another disappointing day fixing environmental systems for ungrateful alien residents who saw humans as the galaxy's newest laborers, useful but ultimately primitive. 6 years since Earth had made first contact, and humanity had quickly learned its place in the galactic hierarchy, near the bottom. Technologically behind by centuries, physically unimpressive compared to most species, humans had found their niche in manual labor, repair work, and other unglamorous positions that more established species preferred to outsource. Tyler had been on Nexus Station for 3 standard years now, working as a maintenance technician. The job paid decently by Earth standards, enough that he could send credits back home to his struggling family. The galactic credit exchange rate wasn't kind to Earth's economy, still recovering from the shock of discovering they were far from alone in the universe. He had ventured into the lower markets during his rare day off, mostly to escape the confines of the human quarter. The lower markets were where the real deals could be found, and also the scams, the dangerous goods, and the items that fell off cargo ships under mysterious circumstances. But Tyler wasn't looking for trouble, just something interesting to break the monotony. "Human? Yes, you." A voice called out from a dimly lit stall. "I have exactly what you need." Tyler glanced over at the source of the voice. A Tracian merchant waved multiple limbs enthusiastically. Traxians were known for their aggressive sales tactics and flexible relationship with the truth. "I doubt that," Tyler replied, but curiosity pulled him toward the stall anyway. The Traxian's 4 eyes brightened when Tyler approached. "Most excellent. I am Zorak, purveyor of rare antiquities and valuable curiosities from across the galaxy." The stall was cluttered with an eclectic collection of items that looked like junk to Tyler's untrained eye. Twisted pieces of metal, containers of unidentifiable substances, and devices that might have been advanced technology or simple paperweights. "I don't need anything," Tyler said, already regretting the interaction. But it is not about need. It is about opportunity." Zorak shifted his bulbous body and reached behind his stall. "For you, I have something special. Something from your own world." Tyler's interest was piqued despite himself. Items from Earth were rare on Nexus Station. Most humans brought little with them when they came to work, and Earth-made products were considered primitive by galactic standards. With a theatrical flourish, Zorak heaved a heavy object onto the counter of his stall. "Behold." Tyler stared at a small safe, roughly the size of a microwave. It was clearly of Earth manufacture, its metal surface corroded and pitted. An analog combination dial hung loosely from its face, and patches of rust covered much of its exterior. It looked ancient and worthless. "That's your special item?" Tyler asked skeptically. "Yes, an authentic human security container, filled with unknown treasures." Zorak's voice raised in pitch with excitement. "Who knows what valuable artifacts of your civilization might be locked within?" "It's just an old safe," Tyler said flatly. "And it's empty, I'm sure." "How can you be sure without opening it?" Zorak countered. "The previous owner tried and failed. The locking mechanism is most challenging." Tyler examined the safe more closely. It was indeed an old model, probably from the early 21st century. The combination dial was damaged, and the hinges were severely rusted. The previous owner was probably the one who found it at the bottom of an ocean. "This thing is corroded beyond repair, which is why I offer it to you at a most reasonable price. Only 50 credits. Tyler snorted. 50 credits? That's a week's pay for something that belongs in a recycler. By now, their conversation had attracted the attention of several nearby aliens. A pair of Vorath, tall and slender with translucent skin that revealed shadowy organs beneath, moved closer, their breathing apparatus emitting soft clicking sounds. Is the primitive attempting to acquire technology? One of them asked in the common galactic language, not bothering to lower its voice. Perhaps it wishes to store its primitive artifacts. The other replied with a sound like bubbling liquid that Tyler recognized as Vorith laughter. A passing crawl, its heavily armored exoskeleton gleaming under the market lights, paused to observe. Human, that containment unit is clearly non-functional. Your species' inability to recognize obsolescence continues to astound. Tyler felt his face flush with embarrassment and anger. This was the everyday reality for humans in galactic society, constant reminders of their perceived inferiority. 10 credits, he said to Zorak, not entirely sure why he was making an offer at all. Perhaps it was simple defiance against the mocking aliens. 40 credits, Zorak countered immediately. 15, and only because I feel sorry for you trying to sell actual garbage, Tyler said. The gathering aliens watched the exchange with amusement, chittering and clicking to each other about the foolish human haggling over worthless junk. 30 credits. My final offer. I have offspring to feed. Zorak's limbs gesticulated dramatically. 20, and I'm walking away if you say anything higher, Tyler said firmly. Zorak made a show of considering the offer before extending a limb. We have an agreement, human. 20 credits for this magnificent artifact of your world. Tyler tapped his wrist device, transferring the credits to Zorak's account. He wasn't sure why he'd made the purchase. Perhaps it was the rare mention of Earth, or simple boredom, or the desire to walk away from the sneering aliens with something, even if it was junk. The human has purchased garbage, announced the crawl to nobody in particular. How fitting. The surrounding aliens erupted in various forms of laughter. Hissing, clicking, gurgling, and trilling sounds that transcended species barriers but conveyed the same message, mockery. You've been swindled, human, said one of the Vorith. That security vessel has been submerged in liquid. Any contents are certainly destroyed. Tyler hoisted the safe, surprised by its weight. He forced a smile. Maybe I just needed a paperweight. This prompted another round of alien laughter. Most species didn't use physical paper anymore, making the concept of a paperweight another example of human primitiveness. As Tyler carried his purchase away from the market, he could still hear the aliens discussing his foolishness. It stung, but he was used to it. Humans were still newcomers to the galactic community, and they had quickly discovered that despite all their science fiction fantasies, they were far from impressive on the cosmic scale. Their technology was centuries behind, their physical attributes unremarkable, and their only real value was as a source of cheap labor. Back in his small quarters in the human section of Nexus Station, Tyler placed the safe on his desk and examined it more closely. Why had he bought it? 20 credits wasn't a fortune, but it wasn't nothing either. Maybe it was a small act of rebellion, owning something from Earth, even if it was junk. The safe was in terrible condition. Decades of corrosion had left the metal pitted and discolored. The combination dial hung loosely, and the hinges were crusted with rust. There was no manufacturer's name visible, just the faded remnants of a serial number. Tyler touched the dial experimentally. To his surprise, it turned, though with considerable resistance. He worked it back and forth a few times, breaking loose some of the built-up corrosion. Well, I've got nothing better to do, he muttered to himself. Tyler was good with his hands. It was why he'd been hired as a maintenance technician. He gathered some basic tools and set to work. First, he applied a homemade degreasing solution to the dial mechanism, working it into the corroded parts. Then he carefully scraped away the worst of the rust around the hinges and the door seam. As he worked, he found himself enjoying the simple, physical task. Most of his regular maintenance work involved integrated systems, environmental controls, waste management, power distribution, all designed by alien engineers with interfaces optimized for non-human appendages. Working on something built by humans, for humans, felt refreshingly straightforward. Hours passed as Tyler cleaned and restored the safe as best he could. The dial mechanism gradually became more responsive, though it still required force to turn. The hinges remained problematic, but at least now they might function. By the time he finally stopped working, it was well into the station's night cycle. His hands were grimy, and his fingers were sore, but the safe looked considerably better. Not good, but better. Now for the combination, Tyler mused. He had no idea what numbers might open the safe, and the dial had no visible markings left. It was likely a standard three-number combination, which meant thousands of possible combinations. Tyler decided to try the most obvious, 000. He turned the dial right, then left, then right again, stopping at 0 each time. He pulled on the handle. Nothing happened. He tried several more common combinations. 123, 555, October 20th, 30. None worked. After 20 minutes of attempts, Tyler sat back and considered his options. He could continue trying random combinations, but that could take weeks. He could try to force it open, but the safe, despite its condition, was solidly built. Or he could simply keep it as a conversation piece, an example of early 21st century Earth security technology. As he pondered, his communication device chimed. It was a message from his supervisor. An environmental system malfunction in the alien diplomatic quarter needed immediate attention. So much for his day off. Tyler sighed, cleaned himself up, and headed out to fix whatever the aliens had broken this time, leaving the safe sitting on his desk, its secrets, if it had any, still locked inside. The next several days were busy ones for Tyler. A series of malfunctions in the station's environmental systems kept him working overtime shifts. Nexus Station housed dozens of different species, each requiring specific atmospheric conditions in their designated areas. Maintaining these complex systems was challenging work, made more difficult by the fact that most of the documentation was in standard galactic script with technical terms that didn't translate perfectly. It wasn't until 4 days later that Tyler had another free evening to return to his project. The safe sat where he'd left it, a reminder of his impulsive purchase. In the intervening days, he'd done some research on old Earth safes, using the limited data access available to human workers. This particular model appeared to be from the early 2000s, a relatively inexpensive home safe designed to protect documents from fire more than to prevent determined theft. The standard combination would be 3 numbers, each between 0 and 99. Armed with this knowledge, Tyler continued his methodical attempts at opening it. He tried birthdays, significant years in history, and even the first digits of mathematical constants like pi. Nothing worked. After another hour of failed attempts, frustration set in. "Why am I even bothering with this?" he muttered. The Vorith were right. If this was underwater, anything inside is destroyed anyway. Just as he was about to give up for the night, Tyler noticed something he'd missed before. On the back of the safe, barely visible beneath layers of corrosion, was a small panel. He carefully scraped away the built-up grime to reveal what appeared to be a reset button, a feature on some models that allowed the owner to set a new combination if they forgot the original. "Now we're getting somewhere," Tyler said with renewed enthusiasm. He pressed the button, but nothing happened. Years of corrosion had likely rendered it non-functional. However, the discovery gave him an idea. If there was a reset mechanism, it might be possible to bypass the combination entirely. Tyler retrieved his tools again and began a more invasive approach. He carefully removed the dial assembly to examine the locking mechanism behind it. The internal components were in surprisingly good condition compared to the exterior, protected from the worst of the elements by the safe's outer shell. As he worked, Tyler hummed to himself. Despite the tedium, there was something satisfying about the task. It reminded him of projects he'd worked on back on Earth, fixing up old machinery in his parents' garage. Before the contact, before everything changed, Earth's introduction to the galactic community had been peaceful but jarring. The arrival of alien ships had triggered panic at first, but when they established communication and explained that they were representatives of a vast interstellar coalition, the panic had given way to wonder and excitement. That excitement had quickly faded when humanity learned its place in the cosmic hierarchy. Earth's technology was centuries behind most established species. What humans considered cutting-edge, quantum computing, rudimentary AI, early fusion experiments, were ancient history to races that had been traveling between stars while humans were still figuring out agriculture. The aliens weren't conquerors or saviors. They were pragmatic. They offered humanity a place in their interstellar economy, but that place was decidedly near the bottom. Humans could provide labor, resources, and eventually cultural novelties, but little else of value to advanced civilizations. Tyler had been among the first wave of human workers to leave Earth, seeking better opportunities and higher pay than he could find at home. The reality had been a mixed bag. Better pay? Certainly, but constant reminders of human inadequacy in a universe that had been thriving long before Earth's first civilizations emerged. As Tyler manipulated the locking mechanism, a sudden click broke through his reminiscence. He'd managed to disengage one of the locking bolts. Encouraged, he continued working, carefully manipulating the internal components. After another hour of delicate work, a final, satisfying click signaled success. The locking mechanism had disengaged. Tyler carefully pulled on the handle, and for the first time in what might have been decades, the safe door swung open. "Let's see what kind of soggy trash I've won," Tyler said aloud, preparing himself for disappointment. To his surprise, the interior of the safe was completely dry. The rubber seals, though aged, had done their job well, protecting the contents from whatever environment had so damaged the exterior. Inside was a single item, a small metallic object about the size of a credit card but thicker, with a glass-like surface on one side. Tyler carefully removed the object and examined it. It didn't look like anything he recognized from pre-contact Earth technology. The material felt strange, not quite metal, not quite plastic, with an unusual weight to it. The glass-like surface was dark and non-reflective. "What are you?" Tyler murmured, turning the object over in his hands. As his fingers moved across the surface, the glass-like panel suddenly illuminated with a soft blue light. Symbols appeared, unfamiliar to Tyler, neither Earth languages nor the standard galactic script he had learned since arriving on Nexus Station. "Okay, definitely not from Earth," Tyler said, his heart rate increasing. Had he stumbled upon alien technology? But why would it be in an Earth-manufactured safe? Before he could contemplate further, the device emitted a soft tone, and the symbols shifted. A beam of light projected upward, forming a holographic display about 30 centimeters above the device. Tyler nearly dropped it in surprise. The hologram showed what appeared to be a map or diagram, with pulsing points of light connected by lines. At the center was a larger, slowly rotating symbol. "This is definitely not human technology," Tyler whispered. The implications began to dawn on him. He was holding something of potentially significant value. If this was advanced alien technology, it could be worth a fortune, or it could be dangerous. Either way, he needed more information. Tyler's first instinct was to show it to someone with more knowledge of galactic technology. But caution held him back. Nexus Station was filled with opportunists from across the galaxy. If this device was valuable, revealing it carelessly could put him in danger. He decided to start with research. The station had public information terminals that humans were allowed to use, with access to basic galactic knowledge databases. It wasn't the comprehensive access that higher-status species enjoyed, but it might be enough to identify the technology or at least the language of the symbols. Tyler carefully placed the device back in the safe and locked it as best he could with the damaged mechanism. Then he headed for the public terminals in the human sector commons. The commons was relatively quiet at this hour of the night cycle. A few humans sat at tables, some playing card games, others simply talking. The public terminals were located along one wall, basic interfaces that connected to limited portions of the Galactic Information Network. Tyler sat at an unoccupied terminal and began searching for information on alien data storage devices. The results were overwhelming. Thousands of species had developed various technologies for storing and displaying information over millennia of galactic history. He refined his search, focusing on devices that matched the physical characteristics of his find. This narrowed the results somewhat, but there were still hundreds of possibilities. After an hour of fruitless searching, Tyler changed tactics. Instead of focusing on the device itself, he began looking for information on the symbols it had displayed. He sketched some of them as best he could remember and ran them through the station's translation database. The terminal chimed, indicating it had found a match. The symbols were identified as ancient Valatrian script, a language used by a species that had been extinct for over 40,000 standard years. Tyler stared at the screen in disbelief. The Valatrians were legendary even among the established galactic species, an ancient race known for their advanced technology and vast wealth. According to the limited information available, They had been among the first spacefaring civilizations in the galaxy, establishing an empire that spanned thousands of star systems before mysteriously disappearing. Most of their technology had been lost or degraded beyond recognition over the millennia. Functioning Valatrian artifacts were exceedingly rare and valued beyond measure by collectors and researchers. What the hell was Valatrian technology doing in an Earth safe? Tyler muttered to himself. The database provided little additional information about Valatrian technology. Such knowledge was classified far above the access level granted to humans. But it did confirm one thing. If the device was genuinely of Valatrian origin, it was extraordinarily valuable. Tyler logged off the terminal and returned to his quarters, his mind racing. He had no idea how a piece of ancient alien technology had ended up inside an Earth-manufactured safe, but he knew he needed to proceed carefully. The device could be his ticket to a better life, or it could bring danger if the wrong people discovered he had it. Back in his room, Tyler retrieved the device from the safe and examined it again. This time, when it activated, he paid closer attention to the holographic display. The map showed a vast network of points, some brighter than others, with the central symbol pulsing rhythmically. Tyler had a hunch. He touched one of the points of light in the hologram. The display immediately zoomed in, showing a more detailed view of the selected area. At the center was what appeared to be a planet or moon, surrounded by smaller symbols. It's a map, Tyler realized. But a map to what? He continued exploring the interface, discovering that he could navigate through different layers of information. Some showed what might be structures or installations. Others displayed columns of Valatrian script that he couldn't read. After several hours of experimentation, Tyler had learned how to operate the basic functions of the device, but was no closer to understanding its purpose. Whatever information it contained remained incomprehensible without the ability to translate the Valatrian language. Tyler needed expert help, but approaching the wrong person could result in the device being confiscated or stolen. Humans had few rights in galactic society, and valuable artifacts were expected to be turned over to the proper authorities, which meant he would likely receive nothing for his discovery. He needed an ally, someone with knowledge of ancient technology who might be willing to work with a human, and he had an idea of where to start. Nexus Station's academic district housed research facilities and educational institutions representing dozens of galactic powers. Among them was the Institute of Xenoarchaeology, where scholars studied the artifacts and histories of extinct civilizations. Tyler had performed maintenance in their environmental systems several times and had struck up a casual acquaintance with one of the researchers, a Trillian named Nihilith. Trillians were an amphibious species with a reputation for intellectual curiosity and, unusually among the established species, a generally positive view of humans. The next morning, Tyler sent a message to Nihilith, requesting a meeting about an unusual technological find. It was vague enough to avoid suspicion, but specific enough to hopefully pique the researcher's interest. To his relief, Nihilith responded within hours, agreeing to meet during the station's evening cycle at a quiet establishment in the neutral zone, areas of Nexus Station designed with environmental conditions acceptable to multiple species. Tyler spent the day on edge, performing his regular maintenance duties while his thoughts remained fixed on the device hidden in his quarters. By the time his shift ended, his nerves were frayed from the combination of anticipation and anxiety. The meeting place was a small establishment called the Cosmic Confluence, known for its discreet atmosphere and clientele of academics and researchers. Tyler arrived early and found a booth in a corner with good visibility of the entrance. Nihilith arrived precisely on time, her mottled blue skin glistening under the subdued lighting. She moved with the graceful, slightly undulating gait characteristic of her species. "Maintenance Technician Grant," she greeted him, settling into the seat across from him. "Your message was intriguingly cryptic." Tyler smiled nervously. "Thank you for meeting me, Researcher Nihilith. I appreciate your discretion." "Of course." Nihilith's large, lidless eyes studied him with open curiosity. "You mentioned an unusual technological find? I must admit, I'm interested in what a human maintenance technician might consider unusual in this context." Tyler glanced around to ensure they weren't being observed too closely. The establishment was sparsely populated, and no one seemed to be paying them any attention. "Before I show you," Tyler said quietly, "I need your word that this conversation remains between us, at least until we determine exactly what I've found." Nihilith's head tilted, a gesture Tyler had learned indicated consideration among trillions. "You have my professional discretion, Technician Grant. Now, my curiosity is thoroughly engaged." Tyler reached into his pocket and carefully withdrew the device, keeping it concealed in his palm. He placed it on the table and slid it toward Nihilith, using his body to shield it from view. Nihilith's reaction was immediate and dramatic. Her respiratory filters flared, and her eyes widened to their full extent, a clear sign of shock among her species. "Where did you acquire this?" she asked, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You recognize it?" Tyler asked, hope rising. "I recognize what it appears to be," Nihilith said cautiously. "May I?" She gestured to the device. Tyler nodded, and Nihilith carefully picked it up, examining it with expert eyes. Her slender fingers moved across the surface in specific patterns, far more deliberately than Tyler's random explorations. The device responded differently to her touch. The holographic display expanded and revealed new layers of information, including three-dimensional models of what appeared to be structures or installations. "Extraordinary," Nihilith whispered. "If this is authentic, and I must emphasize that is a significant if, you have discovered something of immeasurable value." "What is it exactly?" Tyler asked. Nihilith's eyes remained fixed on the device. "It appears to be a Valatrian cartographic key, essentially a map and access system. These are extremely rare. Only 3 have been verified in the entire known galaxy." "A map to what?" Tyler pressed. "That's the question, isn't it?" Nihilith finally looked up at him. "Valatrian cartographic keys were created to locate and access their secure facilities, treasuries, research installations, archives. Most have led to ruins long since plundered or destroyed. But occasionally," she let the sentence hang, and Tyler finished it for her. "Occasionally, they lead to something valuable. Potentially beyond valuable," Nihilith corrected. "A secured Valatrian facility that has remained untouched for 40,000 years would be the archaeological discovery of this era." Tyler's mind reeled with the implications. "You could translate the information? Figure out where it leads?" "With time and resources, yes." Nihilith carefully placed the device back on the table. "But now we must discuss the more pressing question. How did a human maintenance technician come into possession of what might be one of the most valuable archaeological artifacts in the galaxy?" Tyler explained about the corroded safe he'd purchased in the lower markets, the mockery of the alien observers, and his painstaking efforts to open it. As he spoke, Nihilith's expression shifted from skepticism to fascination. "So the device was inside a human security container? That makes no sense. Valatrian artifacts predate your species' evolution by tens of thousands of years." "I've been wondering the same thing," Tyler admitted. "The safe is definitely Earth-made, probably early 21st century. Someone must have found the device and stored it there." "Perhaps," Nihilith mused. "But who? And how did they recognize its value when most humans had no knowledge of extraterrestrial life until 6 years ago?" Before Tyler could respond, a shadow fell across their table. He looked up to see a Vorith standing beside them, its translucent skin revealing the shadowy movement of organs beneath. "Researcher Nihilith," the Vorith said, its voice producing the characteristic bubbling sound through its breathing apparatus. "What a surprise to find you consorting with a maintenance human." Tyler recognized the Vorith as one of the pair who had mocked him in the market when he purchased the safe. He quickly covered the device with his hand. "Administrator Vexel," Nihilith greeted the newcomer coolly. "I wasn't aware you frequented this establishment." "I don't, typically," Vexel replied. "But I received an interesting report about a human carrying what appeared to be a non-terrestrial device. Given your expertise in such matters, I thought it prudent to investigate personally." Tyler felt a cold knot of fear form in his stomach. Someone had been watching him. "The human is consulting me about a piece of Earth technology he discovered," Nihilith said smoothly. "Nothing that would interest the administration." Vexel's breathing apparatus emitted a series of rapid clicks, the Vorith equivalent of a skeptical snort. "Then you won't mind if I take a look at this Earth technology?" Before Tyler could react, Vexel's slender limb shot out with surprising speed, pushing Tyler's hand aside and snatching the device from the table. Interesting Earth technology indeed, Vexel said, examining the device. This appears to be of Valatrian origin. That's mine, Tyler protested, standing up. You have no right. Rights? Vexel interrupted, amusement evident in his voice. You speak of rights? You are a maintenance human on a station administered by the Galactic Concord. Any artifact of historical significance is subject to confiscation and proper cataloging, especially when in the unauthorized possession of a species with less than a decade of galactic citizenship. Nylith rose as well, her usual calm demeanor giving way to obvious anger. Administrator Vexel, this is highly irregular. There are protocols for the handling of potential archaeological discoveries. Protocols that I am enforcing, Vexel countered. This device will be taken to the administrative secure storage facility for proper evaluation. If it proves authentic, it will be transferred to the Central Archives on Galactus Prime, as required by Concord regulations. And what about compensation? Tyler demanded. I purchased that safe with my own credits. Its contents belong to me. Vexel's organs pulsed visibly beneath his skin, a sign of amusement or contempt. If the artifact is deemed valuable, you may file a claim for a finder's fee. The standard rate for non-citizens is 0.1% of assessed value, minus administrative fees. That's theft, Tyler said, his anger overcoming his usual caution. That is galactic law, Vexel replied coldly. Be grateful you're allowed to file a claim at all. Many would argue that primitive species shouldn't be permitted to profit from artifacts they cannot possibly understand. With that, Vexel turned and strode away, the device in his possession. 2 security drones, previously unnoticed, moved to flank him as he exited the establishment. Tyler stood there, stunned by how quickly everything had unraveled. In the span of minutes, his extraordinary discovery had been taken from him, with only the vague promise of minimal compensation. I'm sorry, Tyler, Nylith said, using his first name for the first time. Administrator Vexel has technically acted within his authority, though his methods were unnecessarily confrontational. Tyler sank back into his seat, a mixture of anger and disappointment washing over him. So that's it. He just takes it, and there's nothing I can do. There are official channels, Nylith began, but Tyler cut her off. Official channels that will take months or years to navigate, if they work at all for a human, he said bitterly. Nylith was silent for a moment before leaning closer. Perhaps there's another approach, she said quietly. Administrator Vexel said the device would be taken to the administrative secure storage facility before transfer to Galactus Prime. So the transfer won't happen immediately. The authentication process for Valatrian artifacts is complex and time-consuming. The device will remain on Nexus Station for at least several days, possibly weeks. Tyler looked at her, a glimmer of hope forming. What are you suggesting? Nylith's voice dropped to a whisper. I'm suggesting that before it's transferred, we might have an opportunity to learn more about what that cartographic key leads to. And perhaps, if what it leads to is as significant as I suspect, there may be a way for you to claim what is rightfully yours. You'd help me? Tyler asked, surprised. Why? You're risking your position. 2 reasons, Nylith replied. First, the handling of this discovery has been procedurally flawed from the start. The artifact should be studied properly, not rushed through an authentication process by administrators with no archaeological expertise. And the second reason? A smile spread across Nylith's amphibian features. I've spent my career studying the remnants of extinct civilizations. The chance to be involved in the discovery of an intact Valatrian facility? That's worth certain professional risks. For the first time since Vexel's intervention, Tyler felt a sense of possibility. So what's our next step? Information, Nylith said decisively. We need to learn everything we can about what that cartographic key contains before it's transferred off-station. I have limited access to the administrative systems through my research credentials. We should be able to monitor the authentication process remotely. And then what? Tyler asked. Then, Nylith said with uncharacteristic determination, we plan how to claim what the key leads to before the Concord administrators can mobilize an official expedition. As they began discussing possibilities, Tyler realized that his impulsive purchase in the market had set in motion events that might change his life, and perhaps galactic history, forever. The corroded safe that had been the subject of alien mockery might yet have the last laugh. Over the next several days, Tyler continued his regular maintenance duties while Nilith worked to monitor the authentication process. They met discreetly in various locations around the station, exchanging information and developing their plan. Through her research credentials, Nilith was able to access limited reports on the cartographic key. The authentication was proceeding rapidly, unusually so, according to Nilith, and preliminary findings confirmed its Valatrian origin. They're keeping the detailed analysis classified, Nilith explained during one of their clandestine meetings, but I've managed to access the basic translational output. The key leads to something called the Seventh Treasury. Treasury, Tyler repeated, as in, a place where they kept valuables? More than that, Nilith said, her excitement evident. Valatrian treasuries weren't simply storage facilities. They were repositories of their most advanced technologies, knowledge bases, and yes, material wealth. Most were looted or destroyed millennia ago, but if this seventh treasury has somehow remained sealed and intact. She didn't need to finish the sentence. The implications were clear. Such a discovery would be of incalculable value, both financially and historically. So how do we get to it before they do? Tyler asked. Nilith hesitated. That's where it gets complicated. According to the preliminary data, the treasury's location isn't in currently occupied space. It's in what's now known as the Verdant Expanse. Tyler had heard of the region. The Verdant Expanse was a largely unexplored area of space at the edge of the known galaxy, avoided by most traders and explorers due to dangerous spatial anomalies and uncharted systems. That's both a problem and an opportunity, Nilith continued. The Concord will need to organize a significant expedition to reach the treasury safely, which will take time. But it also means we'd need a ship capable of navigating the expanse, which neither of us has. Tyler considered this obstacle. What about private transport? There must be independent traders or explorers willing to venture into the expanse for the right price. There are, Nilith confirmed, but they're rare and expensive. And most wouldn't take such a contract without knowing the purpose, which would risk exposing our objective. They were at an impasse. Without transportation, their knowledge of the treasury's location was useless, and the clock was ticking. According to Nilith's information, the cartographic key would be transferred to Galactus Prime in less than a week. It was during his maintenance shift the following day that an unexpected opportunity presented itself. Tyler was assigned to repair environmental regulators in the station's docking bay, where private vessels arrived and departed. As he worked, he overheard a heated conversation between a dock officer and a ship captain. "Your registration is expired," Captain Hayes, the dock officer, a stern Trillian, was saying, "and your ship has failed 3 separate safety inspections. I cannot authorize your departure." "This is bureaucratic nonsense," responded the human captain, one of the few human ship owners Tyler had encountered. "The persistent spirit is perfectly spaceworthy. Those inspectors wouldn't know a functional hyperdrive from a food processor. Nevertheless, regulations are clear. Your vessel is grounded until proper certifications are obtained and safety violations addressed." The captain, Hayes, stormed off, cursing under his breath. Tyler, seeing a potential opportunity, finished his repair job quickly and followed the captain at a discreet distance. Hayes made his way to one of the station's less reputable establishments, a place where various species gathered to drink intoxicants and engage in semi-legal gambling. Tyler entered a few minutes after him and spotted the captain at the bar, already working on what appeared to be a strong earth whiskey. Taking a deep breath, Tyler approached and took the seat beside him. "Sounds like you're having permit problems, Captain." Hayes turned to look at him, eyes narrowing suspiciously. "You eavesdropping on my conversations, kid? Hard not to overhear when I'm fixing environmental systems 3 meters away," Tyler replied. "I'm Tyler Grant, by the way. Station maintenance." "Blake Hayes," the captain replied after a moment. "And yeah, I'm having permit problems thanks to pencil-pushing bureaucrats who wouldn't know a solid ship if it landed on them." Tyler signaled the bartender for a drink of his own. "Couldn't help noticing you run independent transport. Not many human captains out here. Hayes took a long swallow of his whiskey. Been flying the Persistent Spirit for almost 4 years now. One of the first humans to get licensed after contact. And now they're trying to ground me over technicalities because some Vorith inspector doesn't like humans operating their own vessels. That's rough, Tyler sympathized. Though I might have a proposition that could help with your situation. Hayes raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Tyler chose his words carefully. I'm looking for transport to the Verdant Expanse. Private, discreet transport. I'm willing to pay well. Enough to cover whatever bribes or expedited fees it might take to get your ship cleared for departure. Hayes stared at him for a long moment. The Verdant Expanse? That's not exactly a pleasure cruise destination, kid. What's a station maintenance worker want in that dangerous corner of nowhere? Let's just say I have a lead on something valuable, Tyler said vaguely. Valuable enough to make it worth your while. 10,000 credits up front, and a percentage of whatever we find. The captain's eyes widened slightly at the mentioned sum, a substantial amount by human standards. And where exactly in the expanse would we be headed? I have coordinates, Tyler assured him. And a guide of sorts. Hayes studied him with new interest. You're talking about a treasure hunt. Something like that. A slow smile spread across Hayes's face. Well, as it happens, the Persistent Spirit is particularly well suited for the expanse. Modified navigation systems, reinforced shields. The safety violations those inspectors cited are cosmetic, not functional. So you're interested? Tyler asked. Potentially, Hayes nodded. But I'd need to know more before committing. And I'd need to see those credits before making any moves to get my ship cleared. Tyler had anticipated this. I can transfer 2,000 as a good faith deposit. The rest when we're ready to depart. As for details, I need to introduce you to my partner in this venture. She's the expert on what we're looking for. She? Hayes raised an eyebrow. A xenoarchaeologist, Tyler explained. Trillian. She can explain the objective better than I can. Hayes considered this for a moment, then extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement. All right, Grant. You've piqued my interest. Set up a meeting with your Trillian expert, show me some credits, and we'll talk specifics. But I warn you, if this smells like anything illegal, I'm out. I bend rules, I don't break laws. Tyler shook the offered hand, relief washing over him. Nothing illegal, Captain. Just a recovery operation for something that's rightfully mine. Hayes gave him a skeptical look, but nodded. We'll see. Now, let me finish my drink, and you can tell me how a maintenance worker came to be planning expeditions to the Verdant Expanse. Tyler spent the next hour sharing a modified version of his story with Hayes, omitting certain details about the Valatrian device and its confiscation. By the time they parted, the captain seemed genuinely intrigued by the prospect. The next step was to bring Nihilith and Hayes together to finalize their plan. Tyler arranged a meeting for the following day in a quiet section of the station's arboretum, a neutral space where various species could interact comfortably. Nihilith arrived first, followed by Tyler, and finally Hayes, who approached with the cautious gait of someone evaluating a potentially risky business proposition. Introductions were made, and Nihilith wasted no time in explaining the nature of their objective. A Valatrian treasury, untouched for millennia, located in an uncharted system within the Verdant Expanse. Hayes whistled softly when she finished. A Valatrian treasury? Those are the stuff of spacer legends. Most have been cleaned out for thousands of years. Which is why this discovery is so significant, Nihilith emphasized. The seventh treasury appears to have remained sealed and secure. Its existence wasn't even known until the cartographic key was authenticated. And this key, it gives exact coordinates? Hayes asked. Precise stellar coordinates, approach vectors, and access protocols, Nihilith confirmed. Everything needed to locate and enter the facility. Hayes stroked his chin thoughtfully. And you're sure you can access this information? From what you've told me, the key itself is locked away in administrative storage. I've already copied the essential data, Nihilith said with quiet pride. My access to the authentication process was limited but sufficient to extract the location and basic operational parameters. Impressive, Hayes acknowledged. But there's still the matter of my ship. It's grounded until those violations are addressed or the inspectors are persuaded to reconsider. How much would it take? Tyler asked directly. Hayes named a figure, 8,000 credits for expedited processing and certain administrative oversights. It was steep, but not impossible. I can provide $6,000 from my research funds, Nylith offered unexpectedly. Classified as equipment expenses for an approved field study. Tyler stared at her in surprise. You'd risk your career funding? As I said before, Nylith replied with a slight smile. The opportunity to be the first to document an intact Valatrian treasury is worth certain risks. With Nylith's contribution and the credits Tyler had saved from his maintenance work, they could cover Hayes's expenses and the initial preparations for the journey. There's one more complication, Hayes said after they'd settled the financial arrangements. Even with my ship cleared for departure, we'd need a plausible reason for traveling to the expanse. The station monitors all outbound journeys, and a course to an uncharted region would raise immediate suspicions. Could we file a false flight plan? Tyler suggested. Hayes shook his head. Too risky. If we're caught falsifying destination data, my license would be permanently revoked, assuming we avoided actual imprisonment. What about a legitimate reason? Nylith proposed. I could register an exploratory research mission. As a xenoarchaeologist, I occasionally conduct field expeditions. Would that cover a journey to the expanse? Hayes asked skeptically. Not specifically, no, Nylith admitted. But it would cover a journey to the Meridian Cluster, which is in the same general direction. Once we're beyond Nexus Station's monitoring range, we could alter course for the true destination. The plan was taking shape. Hayes would work on getting his ship cleared for departure while Nylith prepared the necessary research authorization. Tyler would gather supplies and equipment they might need for the expedition. One last question, Hayes said as their meeting concluded. What exactly are we expecting to find in this treasury? And how do we plan to transport it back? If it's physical wealth, precious metals, artifacts, we might need cargo capacity I don't have. Nylith and Tyler exchanged glances. It was a practical question they hadn't fully considered. The historical records are vague, Nylith explained. Valatrian treasuries contain various forms of wealth, technological, informational, and material. We won't know exactly what we're dealing with until we arrive. Well, the persistent spirit has limited cargo space, Hayes warned. If we're talking about hauling tons of ancient alien gold or whatever, we might need to reconsider our approach. Let's cross that bridge when we come to it, Tyler suggested. For now, our priority is reaching the treasury before anyone else does. With their roles defined and their plan established, the unlikely trio dispersed to begin preparations. They agreed to maintain minimal contact until everything was ready, to avoid drawing unwanted attention. As Tyler returned to his quarters that night, he marveled at how dramatically his life had changed in just a few days. From a simple maintenance technician, mocked by aliens for purchasing a corroded safe, he had become part of a secret expedition to recover an ancient alien treasure. Whether it led to wealth, knowledge, or disaster remained to be seen, but for the first time since leaving Earth, he felt a sense of purpose and possibility. Little did he know that their actions had not gone unnoticed. In the administrative levels of Nexus Station, Administrator Vexel was reviewing security feeds that had captured Tyler's meetings with Nylith and Hayes. The Vorith's breathing apparatus emitted a series of satisfied clicks as he compiled the evidence of their conspiracy. Most interesting, Vexel murmured to himself. The human and his accomplices think they can reach the Valatrian treasury first. Perhaps it's time to arrange a proper welcome for them when they arrive. With a few deft movements of his slender limbs, Vexel initiated a secure communication channel to Concord Central Command. The race for the 7th treasury had truly begun, and Vexel was determined to ensure that humans would not be the victors. The next several days were a flurry of careful, discreet preparations. Tyler continued his regular maintenance duties to avoid arousing suspicion while gathering supplies during his off hours. Nylith worked on the necessary research authorizations and refined their navigation data based on the information she'd extracted from the cartographic key. Captain Hayes focused on getting the persistent spirit cleared for departure, using the credits they'd provided to expedite the process and address the most visible safety violations. 5 days after their initial meeting in the Arboretum, Hayes sent the coded message they'd been waiting for. Cargo secured. Departure approved for next cycle. The time had come. Tyler submitted his resignation from his maintenance position, citing personal reasons and the desire to return to Earth. It was a common enough occurrence among human workers that it shouldn't raise immediate alarms. He packed his few possessions, including the corroded safe that had started this entire adventure, and made his way to the prearranged meeting point near the private docking base. Nylith was already there, carrying a small case of what she described as essential research equipment. Her amphibious features revealed little emotion, but Tyler had learned to recognize the subtle signs of excitement in the way her breathing filters pulsed rapidly. "Are you nervous?" he asked as they waited for Hayes. "Apprehensive, perhaps," Nylith replied. "What we're attempting carries significant risk, both professional and physical. The Verdant Expanse isn't known for being hospitable to explorers." Having second thoughts? Tyler couldn't help asking. Nylith's large eyes focused on him intently. "Not at all. The opportunity to document a previously unknown Valatrian installation. It's the culmination of my life's work. The risk is worth the potential discovery." Before Tyler could respond, Hayes appeared at the end of the corridor, gesturing for them to follow. They moved quickly through the less traveled sections of the docking area, avoiding the main security checkpoints where possible. The persistent Spirit was docked in one of the smaller bays, and Tyler's first glimpse of the ship was not entirely reassuring. It was a modified transport vessel, roughly 40 meters in length, with visible patches and repairs across its hull. The name was painted in fading letters along one side, partially obscured by a more recent welding seam. Hayes noticed Tyler's expression and grinned. "Don't judge her by her appearance. The Spirit's got it where it counts. I've made some special modifications that make her perfect for the Expanse." They boarded quickly, Hayes leading them through narrow corridors to the ship's modest bridge. The interior was cluttered but functional, with systems that appeared to be a mixture of original components and aftermarket additions. "Stow your gear and strap in," Hayes instructed as he began the pre-launch sequence. "Departure's approved, but I'd rather be in the void before anyone decides to ask additional questions." Tyler and Nylith secured their belongings and took seats in the bridge's auxiliary stations. The ship's systems came online with a series of hums, clicks, and occasional disconcerting rattles. "Don't worry about the noise," Hayes assured them without looking up from his controls. "Old ships talk. It's the ones that go silent you need to worry about." The docking clamps released with a thud that reverberated through the hull, and the persistent Spirit eased away from Nexus Station under minimal thrust. Through the viewport, Tyler watched as the massive structure of the station, his home for the past 3 years, receded into the distance. "Nexus Control, this is Persistent Spirit," Hayes said into the communication system, confirming departure trajectory to Meridian Cluster for approved research expedition, requesting final clearance for sublight acceleration. There was a brief pause before the response came. "Persistent Spirit, Nexus Control, you are cleared for departure. Maintain filed course until you've cleared station proximity zone. Safe journey." Hayes waited until they were well beyond the station's immediate traffic before engaging the main engines. The ship surged forward with surprising power, the stars outside beginning to elongate as they accelerated. "Course laid in for the Meridian Cluster, as filed," Hayes announced. "We'll maintain this vector until we're beyond monitoring range, then make the course correction for the Verdant Expanse." He turned to Nylith. "I'll need those precise coordinates when we're ready for the shift." Nylith nodded, already working on one of the navigational terminals, inputting data from her research materials. For the next several hours, they continued on their filed course, maintaining regular communication with traffic control stations along their route. Once they passed the outer marker of the Nexus system, Hayes reduced their speed and gathered them for a conference. "We're beyond routine monitoring now," he explained. "Before we alter course, I want to be absolutely clear on where we're going and what we're expecting to find. Once we enter the Expanse, communication with the established networks becomes spotty at best. We'll be on our own." Nylith projected a holographic star chart, highlighting a region at the edge of the map. "The Valatrian installation is located here, in a star system designated only by numerical coordinates in the cartographic key. It's approximately 3 days' journey at standard FTL speeds, though the spatial anomalies in the Expanse may extend that time frame." "And what exactly are we expecting when we arrive?" Hayes pressed. "According to the limited translation I was able to complete, Nilith said. The seventh treasury is an orbital installation around the system's fourth planet. The facility was designed to remain sealed and protected until accessed using the proper protocols, which I've extracted from the key. Orbital installation, Hayes repeated. What kind of defenses are we talking about? Automated weapons? Shield systems? Unknown, Nilith admitted. The Valatrians were known for their sophisticated security measures, but after 40,000 years, most active systems should have degraded beyond functionality. Should have, Tyler noted. But we can't be certain. That's why we'll approach with caution, Hayes said firmly. I've dealt with ancient automated defenses before. Sometimes they're dead as expected, sometimes they've been drawing power from sources that last millennia longer than they should. We'll conduct full scans before attempting any approach. With their plan confirmed, Hayes altered their course. The stars shifted in the viewport as the persistent spirit turned toward the uncharted reaches of the verdant expanse. The main engines engaged with renewed power, and the ship accelerated to FTL speeds, the familiar tunnel effect of faster-than-light travel enveloping them. Tyler felt a mixture of exhilaration and trepidation as they committed fully to their expedition. There was no turning back now. Whatever awaited them at the seventh treasury, wealth, knowledge, or danger, they would face it together. The journey through the verdant expanse proved more challenging than anticipated. Spatial anomalies disrupted their FTL travel, forcing them to drop to sublight speeds frequently to navigate around distortions and gravitational irregularities. What should have been a 3-day journey stretched into 5. During this time, they settled into a routine. Hayes focused on piloting and ship maintenance, occasionally recruiting Tyler to assist with repairs to systems stressed by the unusual conditions of the expanse. Nilith devoted herself to further analysis of the data from the cartographic key, attempting to extract any additional information that might prepare them for what they would find. Tyler often found himself on the bridge during quiet moments, staring out at the strange beauty of the expanse. Unlike the orderly star patterns of mapped space, this region was chaotic. Nebulae in impossible colors, stars that seemed to shift position, and occasional flashes of energy that defied explanation. Beautiful, isn't it? Hayes said, joining him during one such moment of contemplation. In a terrifying way, Tyler admitted. I've never seen anything like it. Hayes nodded. Few have. That's why most traders and explorers avoid this region. Too unpredictable, too dangerous. But there's something compelling about it. The last true frontier in a galaxy where most mysteries have been cataloged and explained. You've been here before? Tyler asked. Once or twice, Hayes replied vaguely. Let's just say I've occasionally transported cargo for clients who prefer routes off the established lanes. Before Tyler could inquire further about these mysterious clients, the ship's sensors emitted an alert. Hayes immediately moved to the control console, checking the readings. We've picked up a signal, he announced. Artificial in origin, coming from a system approximately 6 hours ahead at our current speed. Nilith joined them on the bridge, her eyes widening as she examined the data. Those are the coordinates from the cartographic key. We found it. Hayes adjusted their course slightly, refining their approach. I'm detecting significant gravitational anomalies in the system. We'll need to proceed carefully. The final approach to the target system was tense. Hayes demonstrated his skill as a pilot, navigating the persistent spirit through gravitational eddies and radiation spikes that would have damaged less capable ships or less experienced captains. When they finally entered the star system, they were greeted by an unusual sight. The star at its center was a red dwarf, surrounded by a sparse collection of planets. Most appeared lifeless and barren, but the fourth planet, their destination, was shrouded in a strange, shimmering field that distorted visual observation. What is that? Tyler asked, pointing to the phenomenon. Nilith studied the sensor readings intently. Some kind of defensive field, I believe. The entire planet appears to be enclosed within it. Can we penetrate it? Hayes asked. We shouldn't need to, Nilith replied. According to the key, the Treasury installation is in orbit around the planet, not on its surface. Hayes directed their sensors to scan the orbital space around the shrouded planet. After several tense minutes, the system pinged with a discovery. There, Hayes said, highlighting a point on the display. Artificial structure, approximately 20 kilometers in length. Elliptical configuration. No active energy signatures detected. The main screen shifted to show a magnified image of the object. Even from a distance, it was clearly not a natural formation. The structure was elegant in design, a curved, elongated shape that reminded Tyler of ancient sailing vessels from Earth's history. Its surface was dark, absorbing rather than reflecting light, making it difficult to discern details. "That's it," Nilith whispered, awe evident in her voice. A Galactic Treasury installation. Untouched for 40,000 years. Hayes maintained a practical focus. "I'm not detecting any active defense systems, but that doesn't mean they're not there. I recommend we approach slowly and continue scanning." They edged closer to the installation, the persistent spirit sensors probing the ancient structure for any signs of threat or activity. As they drew nearer, details became clearer. The surface was not simply dark, but covered in intricate patterns that seemed to absorb and redirect light in unusual ways. "I'm detecting an opening," Hayes reported. "What appears to be a docking port or entry point on the ventral side of the structure." Nilith consulted her notes from the cartographic key. "That matches the access point described in the data. We should be able to initiate the entry protocol once we're within range." Hayes maneuvered the ship carefully, bringing them alongside the massive installation. Up close, its size was even more impressive, dwarfing the persistent spirit like a whale next to a minnow. "We're in position," Hayes announced. "Now what?" Nilith activated a device she had constructed during their journey, a transmitter programmed with the access codes from the cartographic key. "I'll initiate the sequence. If the systems are still functional, they should recognize the authorization." She activated the transmitter, sending a complex sequence of signals toward the installation. For several moments, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, lines of light began to appear across the surface of the structure, flowing like liquid along the intricate patterns they had observed earlier. "It's responding," Tyler said, unable to keep the excitement from his voice. The lights converged on the entry point Hayes had identified, and the opening expanded smoothly, revealing a cavernous docking bay within the installation. "Invitation accepted, it seems," Hayes observed. "Should I take us in?" Nilith and Tyler exchanged glances. This was the moment of truth. Entering the ancient structure meant committing fully to whatever they might find inside. "Yes," Tyler decided. "Let's go in." Hayes guided the persistent spirit carefully into the opening. The docking bay was enormous, clearly designed for vessels much larger than their ship. As they entered, soft illumination activated automatically, revealing a space of breathtaking elegance. The interior surfaces featured the same intricate patterns as the exterior, but here they glowed with subtle, shifting colors. "Atmosphere readings?" Nilith asked as Hayes completed the docking procedure. "Surprisingly, there's an atmosphere," Hayes reported, checking his instruments. "Composition is close to standard galactic norm. Slightly higher oxygen content, but within safe parameters for all of us. Temperature is stable at 19 degrees Celsius. "That's impossible," Tyler said. "After 40,000 years, how could there still be a maintained atmosphere?" "Valatrian technology," Nilith explained, her voice filled with reverent awe. "Their environmental systems were legendary for their durability. Still, I recommend we use breathing apparatus initially, as a precaution." They suited up in the ship's lightweight environmental gear, not full space suits, but masks and portable air supplies that would protect them from potentially harmful contaminants. Hayes also insisted they each carry basic weapons, a precaution that neither Tyler nor Nilith objected to, despite the lack of detected threats. As the airlock cycled and the external hatch opened, they got their first direct sensory experience of the ancient installation. The air that filtered through their masks was indeed breathable, with a slightly sweet scent that reminded Tyler of certain earth flowers. The temperature was comfortable, and the gravity appeared to be set at a level similar to Nexus Station, slightly higher than Earth standard. They stepped out onto the docking bay floor, which seemed to respond to their presence with subtle illumination that followed their movements. "The systems are still active," Nilith observed, running a handheld scanner over the nearest wall. "Drawing power from a source I can't identify. It's not like anything in our current technology." "Which way?" Hayes asked, looking around the vast space. There were several doorways or passages leading away from the docking bay, all identical in appearance. Nylith consulted her notes again. The central repository should be accessible through the main transit corridor. According to the keys data, that would be. She pointed to one of the passages. That one. They moved cautiously toward the indicated passage, which widened as they approached, as if the installation was accommodating their presence. Beyond the passage was a corridor that seemed to stretch for kilometers, curving gently to follow the elliptical shape of the installation. As they walked, the patterns on the walls shifted subtly, and occasionally symbols appeared, presumably in the Valatrian language. Nylith recorded everything with her research equipment, muttering excitedly about the linguistic significance. "How far to this central repository?" Hayes asked after they had been walking for nearly 20 minutes. "It should be," Nylith began, but stopped abruptly as they rounded a curve in the corridor. Before them, the passage opened into a vast chamber that defied expectations. The ceiling soared at least 100 meters above them, and the room extended far beyond what they could see. But it was the contents of the chamber that left them speechless. Arrayed throughout the space were countless objects of every conceivable shape and size. Some appeared to be technological in nature, devices, machinery, or vehicles of unknown purpose. Others were clearly artistic, sculptures, installations, and displays that shifted and moved in mesmerizing patterns. And scattered among these were what could only be described as wealth in its most tangible form. Materials that gleamed like precious metals, crystals that captured and amplified light, and substances that seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously. "The seventh treasury," Nylith whispered, just as the legends described. Tyler moved forward, drawn to a nearby pedestal supporting what appeared to be a simple sphere of iridescent material. As he approached, the sphere responded to his presence, rising slightly and beginning to rotate. "Careful," Hayes warned. "We don't know what any of this does." "It's some kind of data storage," Nylith said, scanning the sphere with her equipment. Incredibly dense information encoded in a crystalline matrix. One of these could contain the equivalent of a planet's entire knowledge base. They moved deeper into the chamber, each discovery more astonishing than the last. There were devices that generated localized gravitational fields, materials that changed properties when touched, and artifacts that seemed to bend light and sound in impossible ways. "This is beyond valuable," Hayes said, examining what appeared to be a container of perfectly formed gems, each the size of his fist. This would change everything. The wealth in this room alone could buy planets." "The knowledge is even more valuable," Nylith countered, her attention focused on what appeared to be a central console or interface. The technological and scientific understanding represented here, it's thousands of years beyond current galactic standards. Tyler found himself drawn to a specific section of the chamber where a series of smaller objects were displayed. Unlike the obviously valuable or technologically advanced items that had captured Hayes's and Nylith's attention, these seemed simpler, almost primitive by comparison. As he examined them more closely, he realized they were keys, physical keys of various designs and materials. Each was labeled with Valatrian symbols that he couldn't read. But one in particular caught his eye, a key that seemed to shimmer with an internal light, changing color as he viewed it from different angles. Almost without thinking, Tyler reached out and picked it up. The key felt warm in his hand, vibrating slightly, as if in recognition. "Tyler," Nylith called out, alarmed. "You shouldn't touch anything without." Her warning was cut short as the entire chamber suddenly illuminated more brightly, and a holographic display activated in the center of the room. The display coalesced into a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, recognizable in overall structure but with configurations of stars and systems that didn't match the current arrangement. A voice filled the chamber, melodic and complex, speaking in what must have been the Valatrian language. Nylith activated a device on her wrist, attempting to record and translate. The voice continued for several minutes, the galactic map shifting to highlight various locations as it spoke. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the voice ceased, and the map focused on a specific section of the galaxy, zooming in to show individual star systems. "What just happened?" Hayes asked, his hand resting on his weapon. Nylith was staring at her translation device in disbelief. It's a message, an automated greeting, and an explanation. It recognized Tyler as a valid accessor. Me? Tyler said in surprise. Why would it recognize me? Not you specifically, Nylith clarified, still processing the information. But according to this partial translation, the key you picked up is designated for. The closest equivalent would be inheritors or successors. The message refers to a species that would come later, after the Valatrians. Are they talking about humans? Hayes asked skeptically. I don't think so, not specifically, Nylith replied. The time frame is wrong. Humans weren't even close to evolving when the Valatrians disappeared. But the message does say that the key would recognize certain genetic or neural patterns that the Valatrians identified as promising, for lack of a better translation. Tyler looked down at the key in his hand, which was now glowing more brightly. So what does this key open? Before Nylith could answer, the chamber's main entrance suddenly filled with light. They turned to see multiple figures entering. Armored security drones followed by a familiar translucent form. Administrator Vexel, Nylith said, her voice tight with surprise and anger. The Vorith administrator moved into the chamber, flanked by the security drones and accompanied by several other aliens in official Concord uniforms. Researcher Nylith. Maintenance Human Tyler Grant. Captain Hayes. Vexel greeted them, his breathing apparatus emitting the bubbling sound of Vorith satisfaction. How convenient that you've already activated the installation systems for us. That will save considerable time and effort. How did you find us? Tyler demanded. Vexel's internal organs pulsed with amusement. Did you really believe your conspiracy went unnoticed? From the moment you began your investigation into the cartographic key, you were under observation. We simply allowed you to proceed, knowing you would lead us directly to the treasury. You used us, Hayes growled, his hand moving closer to his weapon. I would advise against hostile actions, Captain, Vexel said smoothly. The security drones are programmed for immediate response to threats. Tyler noticed that the drones had weapons trained on them, standard Concord neural disruptors that could incapacitate without killing. Not fatal, but extremely painful. What now? Tyler asked, carefully concealing the key in his palm. Something told him it was important not to let Vexel see it. Now, Vexel said, you will be detained for unauthorized access to a historically significant site, theft of classified information, and various lesser violations. The 7th Treasury will be properly cataloged and its contents transferred to Concord Control, as required by galactic law. And let me guess, Tyler said bitterly, we'll receive that generous finder's fee of 0.1% minus administrative costs. Actually, Vexel replied, your unauthorized actions have voided any claim to compensation. The Treasury's contents will be designated as sovereign galactic heritage, with access restricted to properly authorized researchers and officials. Nylith stepped forward, her scientific dignity asserting itself. Administrator Vexel, this discovery requires careful archaeological study. The proper approach would be to establish a research outpost here, not to remove the artifacts from their context. Your input is noted, Researcher Nylith, Vexel said dismissively. However, your involvement in this unauthorized expedition has compromised your professional standing. Your research credentials are suspended pending review. Tyler felt a surge of anger at the injustice of it all. After everything they had done to find the treasury, after the mockery and dismissal he had endured, Vexel and the Concord would simply take everything. The wealth, the knowledge, the discovery itself. As his anger peaked, he felt the key in his hand grow warmer, almost hot. A strange certainty formed in his mind, a knowledge he couldn't explain. The key wasn't just a symbolic artifact. It was a literal key to something within the treasury. Administrator, Tyler said, forcing a tone of resignation into his voice. Before your drones take us away, may I at least know what this is? He held up his other hand, empty, as if asking about a nearby artifact, drawing attention away from the hand that held the key. As Vexel and the other officials glanced in the direction Tyler indicated, he quickly inserted the key into a small, previously unnoticed receptacle in the pedestal nearest to him. It was an intuitive action, guided by a sense of rightness he couldn't explain. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The key sank into the receptacle and turned of its own accord. A pulse of energy spread outward from the pedestal, washing over the entire chamber. The security drones froze in place, their systems temporarily disabled. Vexel and the other officials staggered, clearly affected by the pulse but not incapacitated. "What have you done?" Vexel demanded, his voice distorted by interference with his breathing apparatus. Before Tyler could respond, the holographic display in the center of the room changed. The galactic map disappeared, replaced by a series of rapidly scrolling Valatrian symbols. Then a new voice spoke, different from the previous one, more authoritative. Nihilith's translation device worked to interpret the message. It's saying, "Inheritor recognized. Access granted. Primary protocol activated." The chamber began to transform around them. Portions of the floor receded, revealing new sections previously hidden. From these openings rose additional pedestals containing what appeared to be control interfaces. The voice continued in Valatrian, which Nihilith's device translated haltingly. "The Inheritor has activated the final protocol. Ownership transfer initiated. Genetic signature recorded." A beam of light suddenly enveloped Tyler, scanning him from head to toe. The security drones reactivated but now turned their weapons toward Vexel and the Concord officials. "What is happening?" Vexel demanded, his translucent skin pulsing with alarm. "The Treasury recognizes Tyler as its legitimate owner," Nihilith explained, awe in her voice as she read the translation. "The Valatrians designed this treasury to recognize certain neural patterns that apparently exist in humans. We weren't just lucky finding that safe. The device was waiting for the right species to evolve." The holographic display shifted again, showing documents in Galactic Standard Script, legal ownership certificates that named Tyler Grant as the sole proprietor of the 7th Treasury and all its contents. "This is outrageous," Vexel sputtered. "No human can claim ownership of galactic heritage." "Actually," Hayes said, examining the documents with a growing smile, "these certificates are generated according to Concord legal protocols, completely legitimate and binding. The Valatrians apparently predicted your bureaucracy thousands of years ago." Tyler stepped forward, newfound confidence in his stance. "Administrator Vexel, you and your officials are trespassing on my property. I suggest you leave immediately." The security drones moved closer to Vexel, enforcing Tyler's command. The Vorith's breathing apparatus emitted sounds of frustrated rage, but he had no choice. The Valatrian security systems had overridden his authority. "This isn't over, human," Vexel hissed as he and his team were escorted out by the drones. As the last of the officials departed, Tyler turned to his friends, still processing what had happened. "So what now, Treasury owner?" Hayes asked with a grin. Tyler looked around at the unimaginable wealth and knowledge surrounding them, then at the key in his hand, the simple object that aliens had laughed at him for seeking. "Now," Tyler said, "we change the galaxy. The knowledge here belongs to everyone, not just the established species. And I think it's time humans had a seat at the galactic table." Nihilith nodded in agreement. "The Valatrians chose wisely. They saw in your species what others missed." Tyler closed his hand around the key that had unlocked his future and humanity's. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.